The world was a muted echo to Marci now. Her once vibrant laughter was a distant memory, replaced by a hollow silence. Marci moved through life in a haze of despair, her spirit crushed beneath the weight of her sorrow. The desire for change pulsed through Marci's veins. She craved a fresh start, a clean slate, shedding the remnants of her old life and stepping boldly into the uncharted territory of change. Driven by a desperate hope for transformation, Marci found herself drawn to the unfamiliar. An unassuming storefront, tucked away on a quiet side street, caught her eye. Its faded sign proclaimed it to be an antique curios and oddities. Little did Marci know that her life was about to become irrevocably entwined with one of these silent storytellers. The antique store was a labyrinth of forgotten treasures, each object whispering tales of bygone eras. Marci felt a strange sense of comfort amidst the clutter, as if she had stumbled upon a sanctuary from the chaos of her own life. She ran her fingers along the spines of leather-bound books, their titles promising adventure and escape. Each item seemed to hold a story, a fragment of a life lived. For a fleeting moment, her own pain subsided as she lost herself in the stories whispered by the antiques. As Marci ventured deeper into the store, her gaze was drawn to a garment displayed prominently on a velvet-covered mannequin. It was a jacket, its rich red leather gleaming under the soft light. Marci couldn't resist reaching out to trace her fingers along its smooth surface. The thought sent a thrill through her, a spark of excitement that cut through the fog of her grief. "That one holds a certain allure, doesn't it?" A raspy voice startled Marci. She turned to find herself face to face with an elderly woman, her features etched with time and wisdom. "It's beautiful," Marci admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Beauty can be deceiving, child," the woman cautioned, her voice laced with a hint of warning. "Objects of power often come with a price. Think carefully before you indulge in impulsive desires." Marci nodded politely, but the woman's words barely registered. The jacket had cast a spell on her, whispering promises of transformation and escape. A heavy silence settled between them as Marci contemplated her next move. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. On one hand, she yearned for the change the jacket seemed to promise, a chance to break free from the shackles of her grief. But a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind, fueled by the old woman's cryptic warning. In that moment, Marci understood that the choice before her was not merely about a jacket, but about the path she would choose for her future. Marci left the antique store, the red leather jacket draped over her arm like a promise. Back in her tiny apartment, the jacket seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Stepping into the jacket, she felt a strange sensation, a tingling energy that spread from her shoulders to her fingertips. It fit perfectly like a second skin. Gone was the drab, lifeless shell of her former self. The red leather ignited something within her. The city throbbed with a frenetic energy. Marci, normally a creature of solitude, found herself drawn to the crowds, the cacophony of sound a welcome distraction from the silence that haunted her thoughts. The jacket seemed to thrum in time with the music, urging her forward. Each step was bolder than the last, her chin held high, a smirk playing on her lips. For the first time in months, Marci felt truly alive. The music throbbed, a living entity pulsing through her veins. Marci felt hyper-aware, her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The taste of tequila on her tongue was electric, the bass vibrating through the floor a physical sensation. The air crackled with unspoken tension, the scent of lust and desperation hanging heavy in the air. The urge to lose herself in the moment, to surrender to the exhilarating chaos was almost overwhelming. A primal hunger began to gnaw at the edges of her euphoria. It started as a faint stirring in her gut, a hollow ache that intensified with every beat of the music. Marci noticed the pulse in the man's neck ahead of her in line. It wasn't a hunger for food, she felt, but something far more visceral, more animalistic. She tried to ignore it, to attribute it to the alcohol coursing through her veins. But the hunger grew, a relentless beast demanding to be fed. The night air did little to quell the fire in Marci's blood. The hunger, a living thing now, twisted inside her, a relentless ache. A scent carried on the breeze caught her attention. It was the man from the line, the one whose pulse had quickened her own. His scent was a beacon, a siren song to the beast stirring within her. Marci found herself in a maze of dark alleys, the scent of her prey growing stronger with each step. The first pangs of pain hit her like a physical blow. Marci doubled over, clutching at her stomach. Her bones creaked and groaned, reshaping themselves. Her teeth began to lengthen, pushing against her gums with agonizing pressure. Her nails thickened, sharpening into wicked claws that tore through the delicate fabric of her gloves. This was her, or rather, what she was becoming. Marci's scream ripped through the night as the transformation reached its peak. Her spine elongated, forcing her onto all fours. Thick, coarse fur sprouted from her paws, covering her body in a coat of dark, matted hair. Her jaw stretched and elongated, forming a muzzle filled with razor-sharp teeth. She was no longer Marci, the grieving young woman. In her place stood a creature of the night, a predator fueled by instinct and driven by a primal hunger it could no longer control. The kill was swift and brutal. Driven by a primal instinct she couldn't comprehend, the werewolf tore into its prey, its powerful jaws snapping bones with ease. Blood, hot and metallic, sprayed across its snout, staining its fur a sickening crimson. The werewolf, lost in a haze of bloodlust, feasted, its hunger a bottomless pit. As the last vestiges of the man's lifeblood trickled down its throat, the beast felt a strange sense of satisfaction, a primal contentment. The werewolf, its bloodlust sated, collapsed beside its victim, its chest heaving with exertion. The rising sun pierced through the grimy window of Marci's apartment, stabbing at her eyes. A dull ache throbbed behind her temples. She looked down at her hands, expecting to see claws, but found only her own trembling fingers. The red leather jacket lay discarded on the floor, its once pristine surface now stained with dark, crusty patches. Fragments of the previous night flickered through her mind, disjointed and hazy like a half-remembered nightmare. Oh God, what had she done? Panic tightened its grip around her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. Marci scrambled out of bed, her bare feet stumbling across the cold floor. A grainy image flashed across the screen, a news report about a body found in a downtown alleyway. The victim, a young man, brutally murdered. The images from the news report mirrored the fragmented memories that haunted her. She had done that. Section 3. A desperate hope. A single desperate thought clawed its way through the fog of horror and guilt. The jacket. It had to be the jacket. It was the only explanation, the only thing that made sense. Marci had never been capable of such violence, such savagery, not before the jacket. She scrambled to gather the discarded garment, her fingers closing around the soft leather. The jacket felt different now, heavier, as if imbued with a sinister weight. It pulsed with a faint energy, a dark hum that vibrated against her skin. It was a reminder of the beast it had unleashed within her, the monster she feared she could no longer control. There had to be a way to undo what had been done, to sever the connection, to break the curse. The old woman in the antique store, she had warned Marci. Perhaps she knew the way, held the key to reversing this nightmare. It was a desperate hope, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness, but Marci clung to it with everything she had left. Section 4. Back to the abyss. Leaving the apartment, Marci felt the weight of every stare, every whispered word, as if the entire world was conspiring against her. The city, once a source of anonymity and freedom, now felt like a cage, closing in around her, suffocating her spirit. Her reflection in shop windows was that of a stranger, her eyes haunted by a darkness she didn't recognize, a shadow of her former self. Her secret, a monstrous burden, threatened to consume her, pulling her deeper into the abyss. Guilt gnawed at her insides, a constant, visceral reminder of the life she had taken, a life that could never be restored. The memory of the young man's terror, the raw fear in his eyes as the beast descended upon him, was a searing brand on her soul, an indelible mark. How could she ever atone for such an act? The question echoed in her mind, relentless and unforgiving. Could she ever forgive herself? The doubt was a constant companion, a shadow that never left her side. With each step toward the antique store, a maelstrom of emotions churned within her, fear, guilt, anger, and a sliver of desperate hope, all battling for dominance. The old woman's words echoed in her mind, a chilling premonition of the path she had chosen. Beauty can be deceiving, she had warned. Objects of power often come with a price that is rarely worth paying. The price, Marci now realized, was far greater than she could have ever imagined. A cost that went beyond mere material loss. It was a price paid in blood, in innocence, and in the shattered remnants of her own humanity. a sacrifice that could never be undone. The bell above the antique store door chimed mournfully as Marci entered, the sound echoing in the stillness like a death knell. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, a familiar aroma that sent a shiver down her spine. It felt colder inside than she remembered, the air heavy with an unseen presence. The old woman stood behind the counter, her wizened face etched with a knowing sadness. Her eyes, like chips of blue ice, seemed to pierce through Marci's facade, seeing the guilt and despair that churned within. She didn't speak, but her silence spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of the horror that had unfolded. Marci placed the jacket on the counter, the leather cold and heavy against her skin. It seemed to exude a dark aura, a tangible representation of the evil it had unleashed. Marci whispered, "I need to return it. I didn't understand. I didn't know." The old woman's gaze remained fixed on Marci, her expression unreadable. Old woman. Did you think it would be so easy, child? Did you believe you could simply return the consequences of your actions like some unwanted trinket? Marci, I didn't want this. I just wanted a change. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The memory of the young man's lifeless eyes flashed before her, sending a fresh wave of nausea through her. Old woman, every choice has its consequences. The jacket merely amplified what was already within you. The hunger for change, the desire for power. These desires are a part of you, child. You cannot simply erase them. Marci felt a surge of anger, a desperate need to lash out, to blame someone, something for the nightmare that had become her life. Marci, why? Why would you sell me something like that, knowing what it could do? The old woman sighed, her shoulders slumping under the weight of centuries of wisdom and regret. Old woman. Some lessons are best learned through experience, however painful they may be. The jacket is but a conduit, a tool. It is the heart's desire that fuels its power. Marci, and what about the curse? Can it be broken? The red leather jacket lies on the counter between Marci and the old woman, a tangible representation of the curse that binds them. The old woman's gaze turned distant, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of sorrow. "The curse," she said, her voice barely audible above the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, "is not something that can be easily broken. It is bound to you now by blood and choice." Marci recoiled as if struck, her hand flying to her mouth. "Bound?" she echoed, her voice hollow with dread. "What does that mean?" The old woman's eyes met hers, her gaze unwavering. "It means," she said, her voice heavy with sympathy, "that the transformation will come again. With each full moon, the beast within you will rise, hungry and relentless. You are bound to its nature now, child. The curse of the red leather jacket is yours to bear." Marci stumbled back into the sunlight, the old woman's words ringing in her ears like a death knell, a grim reminder of her fate. Bound. The word echoed in the hollow spaces of her mind, a prison sentence with no possibility of parole, a life sentence she could never escape. The city noises, once a comforting hum, now grated on her nerves, each sound a potential threat, a reminder of the danger that lurked within her. She was a monster, a creature of the night, forever tethered to the beast that had tasted blood, a beast that would never let her go. The red leather jacket, no longer in her possession, held no power over her, yet its curse lingered, a venomous seed sown deep within her soul, a constant reminder of her dark past. The change would come again, an inevitable transformation she dreaded. The hunger, the transformation, the bloodlust, all part of a cycle she could not break. It was a terrifying cycle, one she was powerless to escape, a never-ending nightmare. Passers-by bumped into her, their faces a blur of indifference, unaware of the monster in their midst. Did they sense the darkness that clung to her, the monster hiding beneath the surface, or were they blissfully ignorant? Or was she a master of disguise, her human facade concealing the beast within, a perfect mask hiding her true nature? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a chilling reminder of her own duality, a constant battle between her humanity and the beast within. Nights were the hardest, a relentless reminder of her dual existence. The setting sun, once a symbol of beauty and peace, now filled her with dread, signaling the approach of her nightly torment. As darkness descended, so too did the shadows within her, whispering of the transformation to come, of the primal instincts that simmered just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. She found herself drawn to the edges of the city, to the dark alleys and abandoned buildings where the scent of decay lingered in the air, a stark contrast to the vibrant life she once knew. Places where the beast felt at home, where the rules of society no longer applied, and the wild reigned supreme. Sometimes in the distance she would hear them, the howls, mournful and primal, echoing through the night, a haunting melody of her kind. A pack of her kind, bound by the curse, forever seeking solace in their shared affliction, their unity a bittersweet comfort. A part of her longed to answer their call, to join their ranks, to embrace the wildness that raged within, to find a sense of belonging, to run with the pack, to hunt and feed, to surrender to the beast's primal desires, to feel the thrill of the chase. But a flicker of her humanity remained, a whisper of conscience that held her back from the brink, a fragile tether to her former self. Could she condemn herself to such a fate? To a life of endless night and unquenchable hunger? To become a creature of instinct, forever forfeiting her soul to the curse, losing the essence of who she once was? Tormented by guilt and fear, Marci sought answers in ancient texts, in forgotten lore, in the whispered rumors of the occult underground. There had to be a way to break the curse, to reverse the transformation, to reclaim her humanity from the clutches of the beast. Some whispered of ancient rituals, of sacrifices made under the light of the full moon, of bargains struck with entities from beyond the veil. Others spoke of finding a mystical artifact, a talisman of power capable of severing the bond between human and beast. Each whisper offered a glimmer of hope, a potential path to redemption, but each also came with a hefty price, a dangerous gamble with consequences that could be even more dire than the curse itself. Was she willing to risk unleashing even greater horrors upon the world in a desperate attempt to save herself? Or was the curse a burden she was destined to bear? A constant reminder of the darkness that lurked within her soul, a shadow forever cast upon her existence. The cycle continued. With each full moon, Marci felt the familiar pangs of transformation, the agonizing shift from human to beast. Each time she fought it, clinging to the last vestiges of her humanity, but the beast was relentless, its hunger insatiable. She became a prisoner in her own home, boarding up the windows, shrouding herself in darkness as the moon reached its zenith. The scent of blood, her own and that of her victims, lingered in her nostrils, a constant reminder of the monster she had become. And what of the red leather jacket? Did it hang in some forgotten corner of the antique store, its curse lying dormant, awaiting its next victim? Or had it found its way back into the world, passed from one unsuspecting soul to another, a silent instrument of chaos and destruction? The thought sent a chill down Marci's spine, a reminder that her torment was far from over. The cycle of the curse, it seemed, was destined to continue.